let's get started on our main course. What we're going to do is we're going to pop this barramundi into the oven, and basically barramundi is a sweet, tender fish. It's very popular. All I've done to prepare it is I've drizzled a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of the pan, placed my fish on top. I did my sea salt, my just a little bit of fresh ground pepper, a little bit more olive oil. It's ready to go. It's very simple. So I'm going to pop it in the oven. Now the onions go on the bottom of the pan, and they're going to cook first. They're going to get a little bit creamy, and then we're going to add the tomatoes and all of our other ingredients on top. Again, we don't stir this dish around. We just kind of let the flavors simmer together. I'm going to pop out all my rings here. Go ahead and put the salt right on top of the onions, because that is something when you're seasoning your dish, you want to put your salt directly on your onions so that they it brings the water out and it allows them to become golden faster. I've already got some water in my pot. I'm going to go ahead and get that water going. You know, you can use all different kinds of tomatoes. I really like Roma tomatoes for this dish, and we're just looking for some nice little thin slices. Maybe slice your individual tomatoes into 8 individual pieces, and we're just going to be laying that right on top of the onions. And I've got this really nice bundle of basil here. And you know, pretty much when you add herbs to your dishes, my feeling is, you know, if you happen to have parsley in the refrigerator instead of basil that day, or if you happen to have rosemary or oregano instead, there are definitely herbs that go better with certain dishes, but when it's fresh herbs and fresh vegetables, I hardly feel like you can go wrong. So don't feel like, you know, fixed into a recipe or that you have to stay within a box. Fresh produce, fresh herbs, you're good to go. One of the most important things that I want to mention is the importance of organic, locally grown if possible, produce, because you're organic, you're getting rid of your pesticides, you're improving the amount of nutrients that are in your vegetables. Onions are looking just beautiful right now. They really couldn't be any prettier. And I'm going to go ahead and add my tomatoes, sprinkle my basil right on top. What I'm doing right now is I'm adding about a dozen or so Niçoise olives. I picked this particular olive, and again, it doesn't have to be that kind of olive. I picked that one because it's a real salty variety, and that's what's flavoring my dish. I'm also adding some nice plump capers, about a dozen. And now I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle a little more garlic salt and some pepper. And guess what, folks? That's all there is to that dish. So we're going to go ahead now and let it reduce. I'm going to turn down the heat again just slightly. I don't want my onions to burn, so I'm just going to, I covered it because I want all the moisture from the tomatoes and the onions to go back into my dish. I want to capture it all so that that becomes the juice that's going to just soak all around my fish. It's going to be lovely. So what we're going to do with this mixed veggie salad is we're going to drizzle some olive oil again at the bottom of our dish. And basically, we're making a vinaigrette. And I'm going to explain how that works as we go. But I put it at the bottom of this dish because the presentation is so beautiful before you do the tossing. And you don't want to have the vinaigrette on top, because if you do that, instantly your salad starts to wilt. So you want to have that dressing on the bottom. And all I do is, like I said, drizzle the olive oil on the bottom, about a tablespoon or so. Put a fine amount, a small chopped clove of garlic in the bottom. You don't want a ton of garlic in this dish because it can get overpowering. So we've just stirred around a little garlic and olive oil, and now what we're going to do is we're going to blanch these lovely vegetables. And the interesting thing is, asparagus and broccoli take about 2.5 minutes to get blanched. Squash takes about a minute and a half, so you've got a minute difference. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these in first, let them go for a minute, and then a minute later I'm going to add in my squash and it'll be perfect. All right, so we've got our water at a rapid boil, and that is the trick to blanching. You want to put the vegetables in when they are definitely, when the water is definitely going strong. And I added a strong amount of salt right into that water, and now I'm going to go ahead and put my vegetables in. Let that move around. And immediately we're going to set our timer. One of the great things about this dish that I love is it's an empty out your refrigerator dish. That's what I call it. Whatever vegetables you've got in there, you can put in. If I had green beans instead of asparagus, it would be fabulous. Any type of vegetable that's left over and I want to use it up, I could do it with all zucchini. I could do it with just zucchini and yellow squash. You could do whatever you want with it. It's just a mixed veggie salad. And again, there goes our timer. So now we know we need to add our squash. Once your vegetables are done, you're going to immediately put them under cold water in the colander. Minute and a half on our vegetables. Let's go ahead and put them right in there. You got to be careful because you got a lot of steam going. So basically, you've got your cold water running over your veggies. It stops the cooking process too. That's really important. By the way, this is not a hot dish. This is a room temperature salad that you're serving. So this stuff can cool down as much as it needs to. We're done with that piece. Our fish is beautiful. You always want to undercook it by about 30 seconds to a minute, and here's why. Not that you want to undercook your food, but that you have to remember that your food is still cooking after you take it out of the oven. So for instance, I've taken my fish out, and I know that technically it's still cooking, so I want to make sure from the time that I take it out of the oven to the time it's cooled down or I bring it to the table, that I am aware of that heat still running through my fish, because that's how you get really tender, flaky fish. So let's check our salsa crudo, which is just perfect. You can still see the individual form of the tomatoes, but you can see all that liquid running together, and that's what's really important about the finished touch that you have here. Well, I promised all of you that eat vegetarian that this dish was very versatile, and I want to go ahead and demonstrate that. What I've done is I've prepared some tofu ahead of time. I just put it on my grill pan, which I had right on the stove top, brushed the grill pan with olive oil, a little garlic salt, and put my tofu triangles right on top. They're about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I let them get a nice golden finish, and then I just flipped them over, and that's all I did. And so I'm going to go ahead now and take just 1 serving of my tomatoes and my onions. That is a beautiful vegetarian dish. So the remainder of our sauce, I told you we can dress this dish up or we can dress it down. Right now, as I mentioned, if you put that sauce right over your fish, it would be gorgeous. But if you have some company or just your family or friends that you want to really impress, you're gonna add some mussels on top. And that's what we're gonna do right now. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna add these mussels on top. You want to make sure you have about 2 per person. And once the mussels open, you let them cook about 2 minutes and you just cover it up. So our mussels have been in now for about 2.5 minutes. I waited for them to open. Once they opened, I cooked them about 2 minutes longer. And look at that. They are just beautiful. They add an extra touch of elegance to the dish. And I'm going to go ahead now and just pour it right over my fish. And that is a seafood extravaganza.